Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to this little adjunct series to the Fluffenhammer. I think what we're going to be taking a look at today is one of my favourite creatures that have been... They've sort of had a bit of a resurgence recently. They went away for a very, 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 very long time, and then they just sort of surged back up in recent years. So I want to take a look at the Tzaangor today. The Tzaangor are a really interesting species in both AOS and in 40k, because they occur in both. There was a time many moons ago. They were originally released way back when. The Tzaangor used to be the Tzeentch-specific beastmen who appeared in the Realms of Chaos books, and you could take them in Thousand Sons army lists, and you could take them also in Warhammer Fantasy army lists, and they were basically just... The only thing that really distinguished them was that they were just beastmen who were marked by Tzeentch. They weren't as specific as they are now. Way back when, back in the heydays of history, there were like different subcults of beastmen that were each dedicated to one of the four powers. So you had Khorngor, Tzaangor, Pestigor, and Tzaangor. And then they went away. For the longest time, the closest you ever got to them were Beastmen units that were marked by Tzeentch in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Beastmen in 40k, Beastmen used to be a dedicated thing in 40k. Beastmen were like... They were like Ogryns or like Rattlings. They were just an abhuman species, and you could take them in Imperial armies as well. There was a time when the Imperium was a little bit more lenient when it comes to mutants, and you could actually take Imperial Beastmen once upon a time. Not anymore, obviously. I mean, Beastmen within the Imperium, that would not fly well, especially insofar as the Inquisition are concerned. But the Tzaangor made a little bit of a resurgence. I think the first time they came back was when Silver Tower was released. Do you remember the Warhammer Quest Silver Tower pack that introduced things like the Gaunt Summoners and whatnot? There was a Tzaangor, or a couple of Tzaangor in that boxed set, and that was the first time that they kind of made a resurgence. And the Tzaangor, the way they've redesigned them is they've made them more specifically Tzeentchian. So they're not just beastmen like all other beastmen, but marked by Tzeentch. So maybe they had blue fur or iridescent fur or something. No, they're much more avian. They've got more influence from Tzeentchian imagery, like the Lords of Change and whatnot. They're much more avian now. And then later on, they were introduced as a dedicated unit in the very first Disciples of Tzeentch book for AOS. They actually became a dedicated unit with lots of different options and offshoots and rules and their own dedicated background. So you not only had packs of Tzaangor that operated as like troops, basically, you also had Tzaangor shamans, who were the more ascended magic users, the more intelligent of the Tzaangor. And you also had things like the Enlightened and the Skyfires, and they are Tzaangor they have a specific destiny set out for them by Tzeentch. They have a very particular role to play in Tzeentch's design, so they are literally and figuratively ascended above their brethren because they're gifted with discs of Tzeentch, so they can fly, they can float around the battlefield and do all sorts of crazy and wonderful things. What I like about the Tzaangor, also, I mean, one of the most interesting things that I never expected was the Tzaangor are one of those chaos units, a bit like the demons, that represent a crossover between the fantasy setting, the AOS setting, and Warhammer 40k. Because when the Thousand Sons were reintroduced in, I think it was in 2016, maybe? I can't remember. I think it was 2016. When you got the whole Wrath of Magnus thing, the Battle for Fenris, towards the end of 7th Ed, when Magnus the Red was released as a Primarch, when you got the new Ahriman model, the new Thousand Sons, one of the backup units, which we were really surprised to see for Thousand Sons, was Tzaangor. We actually got the Tzaangor back, and that makes a lot of sense historically, because historically, the Tzaangor have always been part of Thousand Sons armies, way back in the ROC days they were anyway, the Realms of Chaos days, they were part of Thousand Sons armies. Because the Thousand Sons themselves are kind of rare, there aren't that many of them compared to, say, other Chaos Space Marine legions. They back up their lack of numbers with packs of Tzaangor. Tzaangor are, in the 40k setting, they're some of the most populous creatures of Sortiarius, the planet of the sorcerers, where the Thousand Sons make their base of operations. The planet of the sorcerers is this insane shifting landscape where nothing is set, nothing is solid. You can blink and the landscape around you changes. Perceptions of time and dimension are all different, so navigating it is like a madman's endeavor. You have to be slightly insane in order to navigate Sortiarius. But one of the native populations of Sortiarius are the Tzaangor. And the Tzaangor, they don't, in 40k anyway, I think in AOS as well, they don't have any one set origin. That's what I really like about them. They don't have any one set origin. They can come from all sorts of different places. Like the Thousand Sons Codex describes situations where imperial worlds or human colonized worlds are engulfed by a warp storm, and in the midst of that the populations degenerate and devolve, sometimes down the generations, sometimes immediately, and they can sometimes become Tzaangor. Or you can have a situation where under particularly auspicious sets of stars or moons, or because of the whims of Tzeentch, or because of an occult ceremony or something, there is this horrible scenario where pregnant mothers give birth to Tzaangor, where their children are actually their unborn infants become Tzaangor. There's stories in the Thousand Sons Codex of entire generations born to planets that rip their ways out of their mothers' wombs as Tzaangor, which is really horrible. They can also be created by occult rituals, so you can have a situation where maybe a Thousand Sons sorcerer or maybe a Tzeentch cultist on a planet enacts a particular ritual, and that degenerates and devolves, or rather ascends, depending on your perspective, the local population into Tzaangor. The fun thing about the Tzaangor is they don't necessarily have a fixed state. They have certain common elements, so they've got like the bestial horns, they've got the beastman hooves and all of that sort of thing. They've got beaks like Lords of Change, they've got avian elements, they've got like feathers instead of fur. But one of the things that is really interesting about the Tzaangor, because they're Tzeentchian, they're not fixed. They can be mutated. I know the boxed set is kind of standard, they're all pretty much similar creatures. They've got some mutations but not many. But really, you can let your imagination go wild with the Tzaangor. They can be absolutely anything you like. You can even introduce narrative into them. I mean, the Tzaangor I'm building for my Thousand Sons, my Shattered Sons, I've just got lots of box sets together, including the Tzaangor boxed set, and I've just hurled them together to create the most random, wild, mutated creatures I can, because that's what Tzaangor are. They can be absolutely mad. So I've got admech bits and like stapled like tendrils to them, and beastman heads and serpentine tails coming out of them. So they look completely mutated and weird and bizarre, but still identifiably are Tzaangor. You can kind of get away with that. That's something I really love about the Tzaangor. The fact that they kind of suggest narrative by their existence. Another thing that's interesting about Tzaangor is most beastmen are they're not mindless, they're not stupid, not in the way like, say, the orcs are. The orcs are kind of mindless, and apart from a few notable examples like Garskull, like Grimgor Ironhide and all of those characters, most of them are pretty stupid. The Tzaangor aren't, the Beastmen aren't, but the Tzaangor are actually remarkably intelligent. They're remarkably intelligent, and they operate in a different way from other Beastmen, from other beasts of chaos. They flock, for one thing. When they move, they often follow things like, in the same way that birds follow magnetic spheres and whatnot, in order to navigate. The Tzaangor follow ley lines, they follow lines of force, and they are attracted to areas of magic. They can actually feast upon and sort of nourish themselves with abstraction, with magic, and they seek out artifacts. They've got this thing about arcane artifacts, books of lore, magic, very Tzeentchian. So they seek those things out, sacred temples, sacred sites, shrines, that kind of thing. They are obsessed with anything arcane, basically. And from their ranks you get the more ascended ones, the ones that guide them. So the Tzaangor shamans, who are remarkably intelligent. Remarkably intelligent. The Thousand Sons, by all accounts, have a lot of respect for the Tzaangor shamans, because the Tzaangor shamans are very close. Their magic is instinctive. They're not necessarily learned in the academic way of the Thousand Sun sorcerers. They are connected to Tzeentch and to magic in a very visceral, very atavistic way, in an animal way. They're kind of like the true children of chaos, the true children of Tzeentch, the Tzaangor. And Thousand Suns respect them. They have a lot of time for them. On the planet of the sorcerers, on Sorciarius, they used to have the function of seneschals, so they were sort of like the servant caste, and that's still true. They're within the Silver Towers, within what's left of Tizca, the city of the Thousand Sons. They serve as like attendants to the Thousand Sons, but at the same time you get these wild flocks roaming all over the planet, and they can navigate it in ways that even the Thousand Sons can't, because they were born to it, because they are linked to the shifting tides of insanity in a way that no other creature is. And that's kind of cool. I really, really like that about the Tzaangor. It makes them fascinating. The same is true in AOS. I mean, the Tzaangor, they cross several different armies, so you can get Tzaangor in the Beasts of Chaos book, for example, in which they are very, very removed from the other Beasts of Chaos, because of course they are god-specific, and the other Beasts of Chaos don't really like that. You also get them in the Disciples of Tzeentch, where again they become parts of the Arcanite cults. They're kind of drawn into the Arcanite cults, but at the same time they operate on a slightly separate level. They aren't quite the same. They operate on a kind of sacred level where they are left to their own devices. The Thousand Sons regard them as holy abominations. They're expressions of Tzeentch's will in the material universe, and that's kind of cool. I really like that. For me, they're one of the most fascinating units. In the Thousand Sons Codex, as an army choice, they're really cool as well. They're kind of like, they're slightly tougher, more aggressive cultists. That's the way they work. They're not as durable as Thousand Sons, obviously. They don't hit as hard, but they plug that close combat gap that Thousand Sons have. You know, Thousand Sons are just not very good at close combat. They're not meant to be. But that's what Tzaangor do. They're screening units. They're quite fast as well. They move quite fast. And they're very good. They're actually surprisingly good in close combat because of a peculiar mix of psychic buffs and stratagems. They can be pretty damn nasty. I think it's a surprise to many because they look quite fragile. I think it's a surprise for many when you're in a game and your unit of Tzaangor, after a few stratagems have been applied, start chewing through units of like Terminators or Aspect Warriors or whatever. I think that often comes as a big surprise. They're a lot of fun. I like Tzaangor a lot. They're lots of fun to model, they're lots of fun to paint, they've got a great background, and it's so nice to see them because they introduce this wonderful, slightly weird element, particularly in Thousand Sons armies. They introduce this strange weirdness to the army. More of that, please. When time comes to do the 9th ed Thousand Sons Codex, and there will be, of course there will be, I would like to see more weirdness, more demon engines, more Tzeentch-specific demon engines, more bizarre, weird, funky stuff that crosses over from AOS. So, like, why not the Sphyranx or the Sphyranx or whatever it's called, the cat thing from the Slaves to Darkness book? That's very Tzeentchian. That would make an excellent Thousand Sons creature. Also, why not the Gaunt Summoners? You know, the Gaunt Summoners are the keepers of the Silver Towers, and the Silver Towers cross dimensions. They exist in both 40k and in AOS. So Gaunt Summoners as part of a Thousand Sons army, no reason why not. No reason why not at all. I'd love to see that. Would absolutely love to see that. In fact, I mean, even things like the Arcanite cultists, the Kyric acolytes, they'd fit in a Thousand Sons army fine. They'd fit absolutely fine. Slightly different versions of cultists that are maybe have a firing psychic attack. That'd be great fun. That'd be wonderful. Or maybe they could do them like because they used to be way back when in the ROC days. There used to be little covens of thrall wizards that you used to get, thrall bands of mortal wizards in Thousand Sons armies, and the way they used to operate is Thousand Sons sorcerers could sacrifice them to bolster their own psychic powers. That would be great. I'd love to see that. A sacrificial unit of Kyric Acolytes in the Thousand Sons army? Go for it. Yeah, I'd love to see that. But yeah, the Tzaangor are lots of fun. I like them a great deal. A lot of Thousand Sons players really like them because they're a nice cheap unit. You can get big packs of them, or flocks as the case may be. And they just look great, and they do the business. They do a lot of stuff that plug tactical and strategic gaps in the Thousand Sons army. Lots and lots of fun. Until next time, my loves, bye-bye!